Aloha, super friend. It is I, Corey Leland, trying a new kind of video. New for me, anyway. Even if you know me really well, there's something about me you do not know. Because I never really admit it to anybody, but I enjoy listening to videos on YouTube by people who rank their top 10 or top albums, worst to best, least to favorite albums by bands they generally like. I've listened to a lot of them by this band, and that's why I thought I would start here because I've been a big fan since 1977 when I was 13. Turned 14 in November. My number 10 favorite Kiss album, Psycho Circus. Yeah, I remember going to buy this record at midnight when it went on sale at midnight. Hollywood, California, Sunset Boulevard, Tower Records. Favorite tracks on this, the opener, Psycho Circus, which is a really cool track. And Paul says when he was working on it, he was thinking, what would Bob do? What would Bob Ezrin do? Because Ezrin had produced this successful Destroyer album. And it does sound like a Bob Ezrin production. Psycho Circus reminds me of like Billion Dollar Babies. Another song I really like on here that not everybody likes, We Are One. Kind of a mellow Gene song, and a little more alternative-y than what you'd usually hear from Kiss, but I really like it. And when I met Gene, I don't know if it was the first or second time I'd met Gene, I asked him about the song, because it's kind of like spiritual, We Are One. I don't know, wasn't even really sure if he wrote the tune, because he was kind of rumored to sometimes, you know, purchase songs from other people, but I asked him about it. I said, kind of a spiritual lyric. Do you think you'd be writing like more spiritual stuff? And he said, maybe. Anyway, my number 9 favorite album. A lot of people think of this as their favorite Kiss record. Not me. Destroyer. Now, of course, Destroyer, produced by Bob Ezrin. The big hit on here was Beth. It was the B-side on the opener, Detroit Rock City, but DJs back in those days, I guess they could play what they wanted. They flipped it around and they liked Beth better. Very mellow, but it became a big hit, as you may know. And they all bought houses after that, but I never liked the versions on this as well as the ones that are on Kiss Alive 2, which I had first, and I got this after that. Just didn't dig it. Didn't like it as much. Coming in at number 8. A lot of Kiss fans think of this as their favorite album, but I don't. I mean, the production is always, everybody admits the production sucks. But I don't really love the songs as much either. Hotter Than Hell. Yeah, there are some good songs on here, that's for sure. A couple of my favorites. Coming Home, really great. But there again, I prefer the version on their live MTV Unplugged album of Coming Home than I do on their second album, Hotter Than Hell. Another tune I really do like on that album is called Main Line, which Peter Criss, the drummer, sings. And the rumor has, I mean, the fable goes, the history is that Peter threatened to quit the band if they didn't let him sing that song, even though Paul wrote it. But it's a great vocal, and Peter was a great singer. Coming in at number 7, my number 7 favorite Kiss album of all time. Not everybody likes this one. It wouldn't be in everyone's top 10, but it is mine. Unmasked. This was the last one I bought before I went off and got into other things for a while, like Van Halen and AC/DC, The Cars. A lot of things were great back in the late 70s. Best time for music ever, if you ask me. Some of my favorite tracks on Unmasked, Shandy, which was a huge hit, apparently, in Australia. And another Paul song, Tomorrow. I really like that song. Very poppy and mellow, but, you know, I love poppy and mellow personally, so it was good for me. My number 6 My top 10 favorite Kiss albums. I'm doing something that I've seen a lot of people do, and I get to say it for the first time. I've heard a lot of people say it, but oh, it's my video. I can do what I want. I'm throwing in one of the solo albums. At number 6, the solo album from 1978 by Ace Frehley, lead guitar. This album is kick-ass. Maybe the best Kiss album of all time, but I've got it on my list at 6. Rip It Out. The opening track is great. Even if you don't really know Kiss, you might have heard there was a hit on it back in the New York Groove, which Ace didn't write, but my number 5. My top 10 favorite Kiss albums. Another of the solo albums, and surprise, it's not Peter Criss. God, that album was terrible. Worst album ever, Peter Criss' solo album. But this one, my number 5, is going to be Paul Stanley. Solo album from Paul. The Star Child. Born Stanley Eisen. And, yeah, had a deformed ear. Can you believe this guy rose to such amazing heights and did so much amazing work in rock and roll? He's deaf in one ear. Yeah. What's your excuse? Great songs on here. My favorite 3 would be It's All Right, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? And surprise, one that many Kiss fans don't like at all. I love. It's called Hold Me, Touch Me. It's a mellow ballad that Paul wrote for Cher's sister, Georgette, who apparently he was dating at the time. That brings me to my number 4 record. I still remember the day this came out. Before I could ride my bike to the store, my next door neighbor and friend, who was a grade or 2 ahead of me, bought a copy for me. No, I never forgot. So cool. Thanks, Joe. It's called Dynasty, and they pronounced it Dynasty in Australia. Of course, Kiss was like the biggest band in the world in the late 70s, 77-ish, 78. I Was Made for Loving You is the big hit on the opener of this one that Paul, you never hear him mention it, but it was a co-write by Desmond Child. Other great songs on here by Paul, Magic Touch, Sure Know Something, and a cool Gene song that I really like called Charisma. That brings me to my top 3, number 3. I love this record. You know the song that closes it, Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, but every song on here I love. Room Service opens it, just a cool, cool track. Paul singing about the rock and roll life they were living. Love Her All I Can is on here. It's a really cool tune with some drum breaks and guitar breaks, and it's a good one. You should check it out. Love Her All I Can. And that brings me to my top 2 favorite Kiss albums of all time, coming in at number 2. And over the years, this has been number 1. I've gone back and forth, but settled in with number 2 as from 1977. Love Gun. The artist, his name's Ken Kelly. Apparently all these women down here are his wife. They're all supposed to be his wife. And I had the jigsaw puzzle. Now that I think about it, I had this jigsaw puzzle. The album cover's so cool. Great tracks on here. In fact, in addition to a lot of great songs by Paul, I think this is Gene's strongest album. I really do. I think that he was more engaged in this record than any other. Almost Human. What a cool Kiss song that is. Got Love for Sale. Even Christine 16, which a lot of people think, oh, saying about a 16-year-old girl sounds kind of pervy. But at the time, I mean, if you're 14, 15, or 16 when you're hearing it, it's not pervy. Anyway, good album, Plaster Caster, another interesting, cool Gene song. Brings me to my number 1, my top favorite Kiss album of all time. You can probably guess. You see this poster back here in the background. I've never done this before, pointing at stuff, but it's Rock and Roll Over. If you're only going to listen to one Kiss album and you've never listened to any of them, you might as well listen to Rock and Roll Over. It's a great, great album. I can still remember coming home from lunch from high school, putting this on. I Want You, the opening track. Mr. Speed, what a great song. Hard Luck Woman, wow, what a great slow song, but very cool. Sung by drummer Peter Criss. Paul wrote it with Rod Stewart in mind, thought maybe he would give it to Rod Stewart. But Beth had already been a hit, and Peter Criss heard it and said, no way, I'm singing that tune. That's my top 10 Kiss albums. Thanks for watching. Happiness and peace.